Hello, everybody. It's been a while. A few health issues, but I'm sure I'll be fine. Okay, so looking here, there's the palette. Okay, this is very exciting. Okay, I'm using a 9 by 12 cold press watercolor paper. I'm using a sponge and only one sponge. And I'm using it for texture, I'm using it to lift, I'm using it to move, and in between, I'm dipping it in a little bowl next to me to squeeze out the water. And basically, it's like kind of like an underpainting here. This is fast and loose. So I dipped it in a little bit of bright yellow to give it some warmth. And of course, you know me, the yellow and the blue make the green. Anyways, so the really cool thing about this, before I even start with the brush, is I'm getting an idea, right? And I also have paper towels. So I can I can lift everything with a paper towel, but I'm also lifting things with a sponge. So I put in a little bit of yellow ochre here, and I'm playing with it. Okay, I think if you haven't never tried this way of painting watercolors, it's very exciting. It is. And I'm squeezing the water out there from my sponge. The paper is dry, okay? So it's not wet on wet as far as like the paper being wet. It is fast and loose. And with the sponge, I'm creating not only textures, but I'm creating shapes. And I'm blending as well. Now, right here, I just touched just a little bit of red, on the sponge, just to kind of blend it in there in the sky and give it kind of a purplish, reddish, distant kind of sky, which is very interesting. So in watercolor, sometimes we go, well, a lot of people do, from your light colors to your dark, because of the opacity. So here I am again. I'm with the same dark blue, right? Now in this painting here, it was spontaneous, or spontaneous. If you didn't get it, I said spontaneous. Okay, so notice the textures you could pick up with the sponge here. And by the way, I do have a paper towel on the side, okay? Now look I'm lifting the dark colors on the left, and I was bringing it up like shoots. Now see this? This is like an underpainting for, like anything you would do, like oils or whatever, acrylics, or even, your first wash. So I added a little bit more red, and I'm only using a few colors here. Okay, so now that I got everything there, and basically it's pretty dry, believe it or not, I took out my Hake brush. Now you can use any brush you want to do these things. I encourage you to be spontaneous. I'm putting in some burnt umber here. Or not burnt umber, my apologies, raw sienna. And just kind of, I'm putting it on a little heavier here. Everything is from the tube. The only difference is on my palette, had different compartments. Okay, so when I dip my damp sponge into it, I would take a spray bottle and basically some of the paint I would thin out. But also with the sponge, I was able to create the sky and the trees by just kind of wiping it down, like if you were kind of diluting it without using a brush. It's very easy to do, and it gives you awesome textures that you wouldn't even know. I mean, that's what is so exciting about this, because it's unpredictable. So I'm using, again, more blue here, okay? And you could see the burnt sienna there. On the bottom, you could see all this, right? Okay. So it's touch and go at this point, right? You're feeling the paint. You're flickering it around. I did use sap green in here too. And I also used black. I really enjoyed this painting. I did, because I was looking for inspiration. Inspiration that didn't come from anyone else. I mean, it was just spontaneous. It was like, okay, let's try this. I mean, I've got sponges laying around and I don't use them. And I've always been like, well, what are they for? You know, do I mist them? Do I put them in, with my acrylics, when I want to keep them damp and so on. However, the sponge, and another interesting thing about these sponges, okay, I dip them in a little bowl of water off to the side, right? And I squeeze out the water. It still has pigments of the color. However, all the colors I'm using here are all related to each other in this composition, okay? Which makes it even more fun. As far as the values go, I did want some values to be I wanted a pretty good contrast. Sometimes, if there's too big of a contrast, I don't know. I'm painting landscape here, and I'm, pretty much a wooded area. So I like, and this was an idea, and I actually went over it once before I did this painting and recorded it. No reference photo. But what I'm getting at is, okay, so you look at the woods, everything looks the same. I mean, all the colors are like blending. There's not a whole lot of contrast, I live in the forest, and and every now and then you look up, you see the sun coming through, and then you see the bright yellow greens, at the tip of the trees and coming through sky holes and such. Anyways, okay, so with a little bit of black, creating some tree trunks. Now, instead of going from light to dark, I went ahead and, using a different brush, I grabbed some lemon yellow. And now I'm going to come back over here. And with the lemon yellow touching on some of the already made greens, and some of the burnt sienna turns into some of the orange kind of colors and such like that. Here I am. I'm using a little bit of black with a little bit of darker blue. It's actually Prussian blue, but it doesn't matter. you can use whatever you want. The colors, for example, autumn, summer, spring, winter, whatever colors. I'm using a card here, going straight up. The watercolor, as I'm putting the paint on, is getting a little bit thicker every time I come back. Okay? And that's the whole point. I have an underpainting. I've pretty much created the mood with the sponge, textures and everything else, and just kind of going back and forth with it here. And I'm loving this. I had a great time doing this. And it's wet at this point. It's wet. You could see the brush strokes, right? So I wanted to, and I'm bringing the light over the dark, So you got to use a little bit more paint because it is wet on wet, and it works like oils at this point in acrylics, wet acrylics. Things are going to smear, they can get muddy, and so on. At the same time, I'm leaving the sky because the sky is going to make this painting look more realistic. It's not, I didn't intend it to be realistic, just a nice painting. Okay, so I'm going back and forth here with my hake brush. I was using a round brush in here and a fan brush, and I know a lot of people say, and don't forget, just touch it, like just push it. You can use a chip brush. If you don't have a hake brush, you can use a chip brush. Use a small one. Okay. With the fan brush. Oh no, you can't use white. You're not supposed to use white on watercolor. Well, I'm gonna tell you something. It depends on your mood and what you're trying to get at. What I like about white, and I'm not using gouache, what I really like about white is that, okay, a lot of people say that white muddies up your watercolors, and it's not natural, and this and that. What I like about the white is it's not opaque. It's transparent. So if I put white on a river, like this stream here, it's gonna blend with the surrounding colors. And to me, that gives it a more natural look. It's one reason why I really like white. This is just ideas, but it was a fun idea, a very fun idea. And I'm just kind of going back and forth here. But I encourage you. Here's some yellow ochre again. Just kind of putting it here and there. I'm looking at different fall colors, autumn colors. Look, I'm putting it down in the white. Why am I doing that? Well, because the streams aren't exactly white. Water moves. It's got shadow. It's got, there's browns, there's blacks, there's blues, there's greens in water. Though this small waterfall on the top there, though, is moving, so I left it white. Anyways, and I'm just flickering up little areas here and there to kind of break it up with a yellow ochre, and I'm using a card here to scrape in just some rocks and give some interesting texture again. Anyways, this was a simple painting I did, and I hope that you get inspired or ideas. And thank you for viewing, and please come back again. So I'm using the card, and I'm putting in like sycamore trees and shadows of trees and tree limbs and such. And this was fast and loose. I'd like to know what your thoughts are. I do this for fun, and it's a hobby. I've taken my hobby, to a different level, but my videos, these are hobbies. These are fun to do. Leave your comments, anything, and, right here. Tried to put in a bird. Look how big that sucker was, right? Well, when you do this, make a tree out of it. That's what you could do. And here I am with a paper towel pat drying it. No hair blower, nothing like that. Just pat drying it. Get more texture. So let's turn that bird into a tree. Just like that. See? I want to wish you a wonderful day, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And keep up your great work. Sincerely yours, John.